Okay, so last week we met some of the main characters in this story. I'm calling them characters. They were real historical people, but the way the book works, tells the story like it was a story. And so, although these are real people, they are also characters in a narrative. So, the Lax family is the most important set of characters, right? Henrietta Lacks and Deborah, we talked about last week. There's another thread, which is Rebecca Skloot herself as a character in her story, and the story of how she comes to befriend the Lacks family and be able to write this book. So those are two important threads. The third thread of this is Gila itself and the scientists who created Gila. So I had an exercise where I wanted you to think about the character of the scientists who were working on Henrietta Lacks and then on the Gila sample. And I want to just talk a little bit more about them in this video. So what we see of the George and Margaret Guy, so it looks like it's pronounced gay, but it's Guy. So there they are outside of their lab. Skloot paints us a pretty strong picture of George. He's a driven person. She calls him a reckless visionary. And he wasn't just a biologist, he was a mechanic, he was a tinkerer, he was a carpenter. He built things. And Margaret is really a foil for him. Whereas he is a reckless visionary, she is meticulous and careful. She's an analytic perfectionist. And she was trained, most importantly, as a surgical nurse. So that difference, that balance in their training is incredibly important for their success as scientists. So, like I was saying, George is a tinkerer. So this is some time-lapse photography equipment that he made. We also see in the book that when he was a kid, he actually dug a tunnel under his parents' house and dug up coal. He's always running around doing things. One thing that's interesting, though, and that's really important from our perspective, is that he just did these things to do them, and he wasn't particularly interested in money. And this is going to be a big shift in medicine from the 1950s to the present day. In the 1950s, people were driven and ambitious because they wanted to discover things. They weren't necessarily interested in profiting from them. They were just interested in doing them. And so Skloot reports that sometimes, George wouldn't bother to publish or he wouldn't bother to patent his inventions. And of course, the thing she emphasizes the most is that when someone asked him for some of this tissue he was culturing, some of the Gila cell culture, he just said, sure, take it. Not, I'll take it, that'll be, you have to sign this licensing agreement or, I want $1 million. Just sure, take it. See what you can do with it. Right? So Skloot describes him as coming up with whenever an idea hits him, he rushes out and he scribbles it down on a piece of paper. And she says that's how he came up with a roller drum technique for incubation. So this is actually a picture that's of that. You can't see the drums themselves. They're behind the siding. But this is, again, another thing that he just built. Margaret, on the other hand, right, is the analytic patient one, the person who's meticulous, and she keeps the lab clean. And Lord knows one of the most important things about this kind of biology lab is keeping everything absolutely sterile. And one of the things we'll see going forward is that failures to keep things sterile messes up lots and lots of stuff. So all of that comes on Margaret's side. And also Skloot mentions that she had an assistant, Minnie. That's the woman on the right. And Minnie's job was to wash everything. And there was only one product that Margaret would allow to wash things, Gold Dust Twin Soap. She was, again, that shows her how much of a perfectionist she is on that. All right, so that's really all there is for this video. I wanted to show you these nifty pictures from the 1950s, but also to emphasize that there's a change in medical culture that takes place between the 1950s and the present day. And it's not quite like saying things used to be good and then they got bad. Or the reverse, things, we used to not care about informed consent, and now we do. But things were different. And one of the ways that things were different then was that people were competing for prestige, they were competing to do science, but they weren't interested directly in profit.